Hi everyone. So as I already mentioned that we are going to start with the CSES problem statements. So we're going to do this very first problem statement, which is weird algorithm. You can see that I've recently solved this problem just with you guys, and I'll also tell you that why there are two wrong submissions out there. There's a reason to that, and which is going to be my lesson to you guys after the end of the towards the end of the video. So let's read the question and try to understand it. So the problem statement says that you need to revise an algorithm. um, so what happens, it will as an input you'll receive a positive integer n, and if n is even you just simply divide it by 2, and if n is odd you have to multiply it by 3 and then add a 1 to it. Okay, and you have to repeat this algorithm until your n becomes 1. Okay, for an example, if you've got an input as 3, what you'll do, 3 is odd, you'll just multiply it by 3 and add 1, which becomes 10. Then, since this is even, you will divide it by 2, which becomes 5. Then, since this is odd, you will multiply it by 3 and add 1 to it, which becomes 16. Or it is even, therefore divided by 2. It is again even, therefore divided by 2. Again even, divided by 2. And again even, divided by 2. And finally, you've got a 1. You'll stop here. Okay, you need to simply simulate this exact algorithm that is just mentioned here. Okay, so you need to take an input integer n and output you need to give. Okay, constraints, as you can see, your n can vary till 10 to the power 6. Okay, now this is the same example, you need to just simply return the answer in this format. Okay, so let us just try to solve this. So if you know how to submit this thing, you have to just create a file, take the input and everything. It's not similar to LeetCode where you just have to write the function, you have to take the inputs and everything as well. So what we're going to do is we'll just simply move to the solution part. Okay, wait, I'm not sure if you can see my screen. No, you can't. Just a minute. So now we'll move to the problem statement solution. So let me just create a file. The name I'll give as PS1, problem statement 1. Okay, you can name it like anything. So as I said, you have to take input and everything on your own. So let's just import scanner class. Okay, so I'll be using scanner class for input. Okay, and also we'll write a main function because that is where your execution entirely starts. So here I'll just say scanner sc is equals to new scanner, and if you know how to take an input you have to do this system.out. Okay, I'll take an integer input as sc dot next int, next next int, and now yeah, now let's move to the execution part. So what happens is it is given that, while your I would say, let me do this thing, integer n as input, and you'll know why I'm doing this. You could just think that I could straight away move to input part. No, but I'm not doing this. I'll tell you why. But I have to do this until your n does not become 1, right? What you have to do is, first of all, just make sure that you print this, and since you have to print it in a single line, we'll just use print instead of println. After this, we have to do one thing, that if my number is actually an even number, what do you have to do? You'll just simply divide it by 2. Fair enough. Else, if it's an odd number, you have to do this. Your n actually becomes multiplied by 3 and then add in 1 and add a 1 to it, and just for better readability. That's it. And finally, when the n actually becomes a 1, I'll stop. So finally, I have to also make sure that I print a 1. Okay, that's it. It should work. Let's try to first of all run this and see if it is working fine or not. Okay, right. So my input was 3. So this is what I'm getting. And if you can see, this was what was expected. 3, 10, 5, 16. You can simulate it. It's correct. But the problem is, as the constraints was given, just a second, let me just come here. Yeah. So as you can see the constraints here, the constraint is n actually can vary to 10 to the power 6. Now, if let's say my number is actually an even number, which is very huge, if I multiply it by 3 and add a 1 to it, it can actually go out of bound, and that was the problem in the wrong summation, as I told you. So that is why we have to actually take a long number. So this this is the reason why I took it. So I'll make sure that I typecast it to long, so that if I initially you'll receive an integer, that's not going to not going to be a problem. This will also not create a problem. The problem can be here. You're multiplying it by 3 and adding a 1 to it. So this can actually overflow. And therefore, we'll just cast it to this. Let me just try to run it again and see if it is making any changes or not. So, so since this is the new module that I've created in here, it's probably taking a long time. Yeah. So you can see it is working absolutely fine. Now let's try to submit this. So for submission, if you don't know, you have to, go here, go to the submit tab, and you need to take stuff. Wait. So PS1, let's try to submit this. Accepted. Cool. So the problem was, if you would have not typecasted it too long, this test case or test case like this or test case like this would probably give you a TLE. Why TLE? Because what happens is, now this is the gyan of the day. So what happens is, when you have a number, let's say huge integer, let's say you have a huge integer and you're like multiplying it. Let's say I'm just multiplying it by 3. This will also give me a huge number, but out of range of integer, right? Out of range of integer. So what would happen is, it will overflow, and what this overflow would actually do is, you'll get a negative number, and once you get a negative number, you'll actually be stuck in a loop. You'll probably not be able to reach this particular thing. Why? Because you know it. You would never. So even if it's like a even negative number, you'll probably be stuck with a negative loop, so you'll never be able to converge here, and that is why you'll get TLE. I hope it was clear. And therefore, to avoid this overflow condition, we have to take this thing, we have to use the long. Okay. I hope this particular thing was clear to you. I hope that this overflow gyan was also clear to you, and I really hope that you're able to understand. Thing that I just forgot to mention here, which is the space and time complexity. So you can clearly see we are not using any type of space here, right? Right, of course. And time complexity, it can be O of n, right? It can't be more than that. Anyways, it'll just convert some way. So that time complexity is not actually an issue here. But for space complexity, as you can see, we are not using any extra space. The variable space does not count much. So therefore, the space complexity is going to be O of n, and we can say time complexity is going to be O of n, and space complexity as O of n, right? So that's it for the video. I look forward to other lectures, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.